Hey, this is Pastor Mark. Welcome back to the podcast. On today's episode of Fultondale First, I sit down with our very own Keely Stewart. Keely's a member here at Fultondale First, but she's also the director of our women's ministries. So you'll find out in today's episode what God is doing through women's ministry and how you can be a part of what He's doing right here.
Welcome to the Fultondale First podcast. Our mission at Fultondale First is to love God, love people, and make disciples. And this podcast is aimed to help you join that mission. Thanks for joining us for this episode.
Welcome into this episode of the Fultondale First podcast, and I'm excited. We have one of our own, Keely Stewart, who is the director of our women's ministry here at Fultondale First. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that and a little bit about you and your story. So thank you for being on the podcast, Keely.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. I know it's always a challenge to get people on camera and recorded, but you know what? I hate the sound of my voice too, so it's just the way it is. But I'm excited you're joining us for this episode. I think you'll be encouraged. So, Keely, first, tell us a little bit about you, your family, how long you've been here, what got you here, and kind of your experience.
So, I'm married to Todd Stewart, who I jokingly tell people all the time was born in this church.
Pretty much, that's right.
His parents are longtime members, and he has gone to this church his entire life. So when we got married, I became a member. That was 25 years ago.
Wow.
We have a 21-year-old and a 13-year-old who are members here as well.
That's right.
So I've been ingrained in Fultondale First Baptist for quite some time.
I mean, I guess now, I know now, in fact, you've been here longer than you have not been here.
Correct. Well, I'll soon be 51.
Well,
so
I'm going to say that, but
half and half.
half and half. Well, it's about to be longer.
That's right. That's right.
That's awesome. So you've been involved in all levels of our church, different seasons of your life and different leadership and ministries. So I guess talk about, obviously Todd's been here his whole life. Right. But, you could have left, right? You could have checked things out elsewhere. So what's kept you here, and what's the draw for you and your family here?
So for me, it's the people. It's always been the community of people that we have. We've had several pastors in my time here. Yep. I was actually fortunate enough to sit on the pastor search committee when you were hired.
That's right.
But it's been the people. There have been seasons in our life where we've thought, maybe we need to do something different. There was a point in time where Todd and I were the youngest people in this church, in our mid-30s. And my children were really the only kiddos here. So, we kind of toyed with the idea of, do we go somewhere else for children's programs? Right. But, he loves it here. My in-laws were here. But the community of people here, I have mentors here, Judy McGuirk and Terry Smith. So we just didn't want to leave. Yeah. So it's very exciting to me to see where the church has been, the tornado and all the changes that happened during that time, and then now to see the church revived really, and growing, and all these new families, and so it's very encouraging, and I really, really enjoy it.
I can imagine, just in my mind, I can imagine how rewarding it is to have lived through some of the most challenging moments in the history of this church, and then to see God do what He's doing. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
That's a pretty good seat.
It is.
To have, yeah.
It is. It's nice.
So let's talk about your role as the coordinator, director of women's ministry.
Okay.
What does that look like? What's your job there? It's a volunteer position, obviously, but what's your role, and kind of what's your vision for that?
So with women's ministry, my role really is I do a lot of delegating. We have a wonderful group of women here at Fultondale First Baptist, and they are always willing to pitch in and help out. So anytime I send out a group me saying, hey, we're going to have an event, I always get a response back from somebody saying, hey, do we need snacks? Or what can I do to help? Those types of things. Some events are more involved than others. We did the Bunko back in February, and that was a lot of work.
That's a big deal.
It really is. It is. Who knew? But women love it, and it's a really good opportunity for our church to have members of other churches and members of other communities to come in and just fellowship with us and, just have a really good time. So I enjoy that event. This past Sunday, we did an event that was much smaller. We did a craft, we did a prayer board. So if you don't know what that is, kind of think a vision board. And not all the women participated. Some of them were like, oh, I'm not very crafty. But Terry Smith, who has been a member of our church for years, her husband passed away a year ago this past Sunday, as a matter of fact. And she has spent a lot of time in prayer and fasting, searching for God's calling on her life at this season that she's in. So she came and spoke to us about that. Back in the fall and the winter, she did a 3-day retreat to the beach by herself. She stayed in a yurt in the woods and fasted and prayed for 3 days. And so she kind of talked to us about her experience with that. That's one of the things that the Lord has really put on my heart this year is prayer. And how are we going to incorporate that into women's ministry? Because there are a lot of ways we can do it. We can do it, one-on-one with a prayer buddy, mentoring, a prayer chain. But I think it's really important. I mean, I've seen prayer work through my life.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really important for us to utilize that, for us to use that tool that the Lord gave us and be able to call upon Him for different things in our lives, for ministry purposes and things like that.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
That's one of the things that, I'm really trying to focus on with our women's ministry, our prayer lives, and then of course missions and relationships, to grow our relationship with Christ and then also to grow our relationship with each other. I think that we live in a society where women are really, really hard on one another. When the truth is we should be each other's, biggest fans and whatnot. So,
well, let's talk about that a little bit because, I mean, really, community is, God made us for community. God made us for relationships. He wired us for each other.
He did.
And that really is kind of, obviously, women's ministry does a whole lot, right? I mean, if there's a Bible study, they go deeper in God's Word. If there's a prayer emphasis, they go deeper in prayer. If there's an outreach or missions, they do that. But everything really happens around this idea of connecting women to women. And so maybe talk about how we do that, but also why we do that.
So I think that the main reason of how we do that is by doing these events, by missions, serving together. If there's a need in the community, I think that there's not a lot that will connect you to another person like serving with that person. So, we want to be able to work with different organizations, work with the schools, different churches in the community, to be able to help them in opportunities of service. So I think that is one way that we do that. And then also through prayer, but you have to be able to trust one another because I understand that sometimes people aren't ready to open up. So you have that unspoken prayer request. But I do believe that it's really, really important for us to be able to be honest with one another, with what's going on in our lives and where we need prayer. And the more prayer you have for that issue or that desire or whatever it is, then the better. And I think by doing events also and allowing women to just be around one another and that's fellowship and to kind of get outside of their little group. I mean, I have my little group of people, that I go to life group with and then I do Bible study with on Sunday night and those types of things. So when we have events for all the women, our older teenage girls, our college age girls, our senior women, the people like me and your wife Tasha who are in the midst of, I don't really want to say middle age, but I guess that's where we're headed.
Where we are.
But married with kids still at home, some kids grown, it's hard to sometimes find the time to really sit down and converse with one another. So I feel like these events give us the opportunity to do that and to see somebody that you know, but that you don't get a chance to talk to very often. And you say, oh, I'm going to go over here and sit at this table with so-and-so while we do our craft, and we can kind of catch up. And I just think that helps us provide that element of trust and community that we need, so that when those prayer requests come in, or those things that we're really seeking guidance for, we feel comfortable going outside our little 2, 3, 4, 5 group of people to somebody else and saying, hey, can you help me with this? You Judy McGuirk, have been where I'm at now. Help me navigate this. Or, Miss Edna, we've served on a million committees together, and you're old enough to be my mom, but will you pray for me for this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that those are two of the opportunities, between serving and those events that really allow us to build that connection and that community. And then, of course, I also think that grows our relationship with the Lord, because we get insight and we speak with people who are more spiritually mature. And, we do the Bible studies and we talk about things that are going on. And that, then also helps us to kind of dig in and really start fostering and re-nurturing sometimes that relationship with the Lord as well.
I think that's well said. I've been having a lot of conversations with different people lately about one of the things you mentioned about just intergenerational relationships and how pivotal they're. In fact, episode 3 of this podcast, Lear Heisch was on, and if you watched or listened to that one, you know how important that is. And so I think in most churches, at least, it's a challenge, because especially in our church, right? Fultondale First, we have worship, and it's an incredible experience. You get to see different people, but you really don't get to know people, right? And so then we have life groups and serving teams. And so those are 2 ways that people connect with other people. But typically, we don't design it this way, but typically, middle-aged people are going to be with middle-aged people. Senior adults are going to be with senior adults. High school students are going to be with high school students. And so that's awesome. You build those relationships with people in the season that you're in. But that missing link is exactly what you talked about. People who have been there before, or who are going where you've been. And, the influence that we can have on one another is so important. And I do think things like men's ministry and women's ministry, that is where we get to really connect with people that we wouldn't normally connect with. And that's so huge.
Agreed. And I just have a heart for women in general, but especially young women. I think because I have been there. I've been in that season of my life where I was a newly married person, or I was a new mom, and I was trying to navigate, being a wife, being a mom, working. And those times are hard, and unfortunately we live in a culture where people don't show that side of themselves very often, with social media, or even, I think, sometimes relationally. People put up those walls, and, you pass somebody in the hall, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine.
I'm great.
I'm good.
Their life falling apart.
Right. Because we think people don't want to hear anything other than, the I'm fine. That's kind of a rhetorical question. How are you? When really it isn't. How are you is often people really wanting to know how you're doing. And so I agree. I think that those, and I would love for us to, I'm praying about it now, and I hope that you will pray about it with me, as well as the rest of the leadership here. I would love for us to figure out a way that we can do a women's mentoring program.
I love that.
It's a little bit sticky because you do have to have some like personality and things like that. But I think it's really, really important. I know that I've been blessed to have women pour into me. And for anyone who has not benefited from that, it's just unbelievable. It really is. It's amazing.
To me, oftentimes, it's a life preserver when you're drowning.
That's right. It is.
It's so pivotal. And, and we'll talk about this in our second season. I'm going to talk about values and stuff, but we do value simplicity here, right? One of our values is simplicity. Less is more. And so some people may look at our women's ministry or other ministries and think, well, man, why don't we do more, right? And certainly we could fill up the calendar with events,
right,
with Bible studies, but we've been careful, and you and I have talked about this. We've been careful to strategically plan events so that what we just talked about will happen, but we don't want to overschedule so that people feel obligated or feel over busy or overbooked, because we all need margin in our lives. And so, we're not going to Bible study people to death.
Right.
And look, let's face it, some places, Bible studies are like the crack cocaine of women's ministry, right?
Right.
I mean, they can't get enough Beth Moore Bible studies.
Right.
And so we do have events and studies and things planned, but we do it strategically so that we create those opportunities needed, but we don't fill your schedule up, because you do need margin for your family, for yourself, for other things. So, I wanted to mention that too. So let's talk about this. How long have you been in this role?
Not quite a year.
Right, not almost a year. Right, that's what I thought. So, but you've seen God use this women's ministry even before you were, in this role.
Oh, absolutely.
So maybe talk a little bit about how you've seen God use it, how you've seen God work.
So for me, this women's ministry, we were blessed to receive tickets back in the fall to a conference that a speaker that was going to be at Gardendale First Baptist. And, we were able to invite friends, people that wouldn't normally be able to go. And it was unbelievable. It really, some of the women and I are still talking about, remember, this was said or that was said. And those types of things. I also remember, in this ministry early on when it started, it was Tara McAdams and it was Sarah Law and then Haley came along. And I remember the first women's ministry event that I went to once we revived Women of the at the Well. And Tara McAdams was speaking about, she had a jar and she had some rocks. We were at your house, as a matter of fact. Right. Tasha had hosted. And she was talking about the things that we fill our jar with. And that a lot of times it's unnecessary. It's stuff that doesn't matter, and then a lot of times it doesn't save room for the things that do matter. And, and just kind of emphasizing that regardless of where you're at in your life, if you're that stay-at-home mom, or if you're that senior lady, or if you're somewhere in between that works outside the home, we all have a mission field. Right. And we have to be conscientious of that. And we have to not fill our jar with so much stuff that we're unable or incapable of carrying out our mission in our mission field. So I know that changed me. Yeah. So
probably why you're in this role right now.
Probably so.
That's awesome. And that's what, when we have opportunities like that, whether it's Bible study or a women's gathering, discussion, an event, mission project, whatever. What I've found is that's when we, create space for God to work around other people, right? Especially when you think about women's ministry. Men's ministry is a totally different challenge. The challenge there is to get men to open up, right?
Right.
For women's ministry, that challenge isn't as great. The bigger challenge is creating that space. And committing to an event or whatever, a time. Because when you get together and create that space, man, God works every single time. And so I love to hear that. So if somebody's watching or listening, if it's a senior lady, middle-aged, young parent, young mom, newlywed, even a young woman in her late teens or early 20s, and they're thinking, you know what, I need that.
Yes.
I need to get connected. I need to get involved. I would love to be mentored, things like that. What are some ways that they can connect to this ministry and get involved?
So they can always go to our website, the church website, and we post events there. We have an Instagram account, and we also have a Facebook account. Anything that's posted, I think what I want most women to know is that anything we post on social media, it doesn't mean that you have to be a member of our church. Or that you have to be attending our church at that time to come. We welcome all women, any stage of life, from any area of town. If somebody's passing through and they're lonely and they, need some connection and we're having an event, they're welcome. I mean, and sometimes we get, 90 people there for Bunko. Sometimes we have 20. And, the Lord has shown me that that's okay.
That's right.
That it doesn't have to be a room of 30 or 40 or 50 women every time we gather.
That's right.
Because He can work in a room of 20. Oftentimes more than He can work in a room of 90.
That's right.
I mean, truly.
Yeah.
So
we'll put the links of the ministry on our website and social media and stuff in the show notes.
I will also provide you with my cell phone number and my email account. I don't mind that going on the website as well. Okay. So, I mean, women are always, I would encourage them to reach out to me if they're interested in an event, if they have ideas. I mean, this is not a one-woman show. As I said, I work full-time. I have a husband. I have kids. I don't have time for it to be a one-woman show.
That's
right. Everything we do is to glorify the Lord and to grow the kingdom. And that can't be done individually.
Right.
So, for ideas that people have, if somebody says, hey, I want to do this event, you know what? I'll come along beside them. They can coordinate it and tell me what they need me to do, instead of, me saying, okay, we're going to do this and then seeking out the help. So, I mean, it really is a group effort. And I'm very, very blessed to be surrounded with the group and the women that we have here in this church.
Absolutely. And we're blessed to have you serving in this role, certainly. So thank you for what you do.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here
Sure.
and sharing a little bit about the ministry. Thank you guys for watching and listening. And especially women, I know you've been encouraged. And there's a clear next step. If you're not connected, it's to take this step to get connected and check out the show notes and description, and you'll see all the ways to do that. So again, Keely, thank you for being here. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Help us spread the word about the podcast by sharing on socials too. Thanks again, and we'll see you next episode.